Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nuri Nadia and matrix number 2217920. Today I'll be presenting on chapter 6, which is prior text and prior discourse. Now, when I show you this phrase, what do you guys think? What do you guys feel? Now, of course, you might say, I use this phrase a lot. For instance, I have a dream to become a lawyer. I have a dream to become a singer. So, but if you have done your analysis one, you might know the context behind this phrase already. Like, this phrase is actually from Martin Luther King Jr. in the I Have a Dream speech that he made during the civil rights protest in Washington, D.C., right? So, this is basically what prior text and prior discourse is talking about. Everything that has been said before in the past is being said again currently. So, another point is that the author of the book wants to state is that discourse is never isolated. What does this mean? This means is basically every utterance or everything that we speak basically comes from another form of discourse that has been stated in the past. So everything that we speak is actually layers on layers on layers of past discourse that has been brought up to today. Now I will show you guys a few phrases and I want you guys to think what type of emotion that it will evoke. For instance, the phrase of once upon a time. What do you guys think? Well, when a audience hear once upon a time coming from a speaker, they might think, oh, once upon a time, they want to tell a story, a fairy tale to be exact. But and of course you would imagine something like witches, princesses, fairies, and other things, right? And the audience will also know this speaker is wanting to tell a story. Next is the phrase of breaking news. For instance, you're just watching your TV, you turn on the TV and see the headlines breaking news. What type of emotions does it evoke to you as an audience? Well, it's kind of recognized as a media cue today, and whenever we hear this phrase or see this phrase, we might associate it with something very serious. So the audience would think of something very urgent or anxiety driven, right? So basically, even the audience know whenever they see this phrase, it would evoke a sense of seriousness, even though the message and the news isn't very that isn't very that bad. So basically, all of this is prior discourse. All of this shapes and how we feel about a sentence is based on prior discourse. And all of this is shaped by our experience, our cultural expectations, our familiar language patterns, as well as genres we have encountered before. Now, Barbara Johnstone also wants to highlight the fact that recontextualization in discourse. What does pre-contextualization means? Basically, the speaker shape discourse based on what the audience already know. An example I can give you is that if you are sitting in a group and the speaker says, "My house is on fire," the group is talking about climate changes basically. This phrase is actually a discourse that has been said by Greta Thunberg during her climate change speech. And whenever they say this phrase, you might the audience already know what it already symbolizes. It means global and climate changes, right? That is what pre-contextualization initially means. Next, I'll be touching up upon intertextuality as well as recontextualization a bit, which is basically intertextuality is echoes or quotes of other discourse that has happened in the past, and basically we are mimicking it and saying it again. While recontextualization is taking old text and using it in a new form or new context. So all of this is basically why discourse, prior discourse, is important in everyday use in today. Basically, a question that I want to ask the audience is what past text actually influence the way we speak now? So that is all from me.
All right, so moving on to the everyday examples of intertextuality and recontextualizations. Just like Sister Noreen explained it earlier, intertextuality where you take something from the previous article or previous statements and then you put it in your new context. While recontextualization, where you create new context using the words mentioned before. So we can see that in the newspaper, journalists take statements from political speeches and then they present them in news story. But the purpose of this is to alter the original intent of the statement and put it to make it appeal to their audience. You can see that in the news Straits Times, where the government news was said that GST will strengthen Malaysia's economy, while in Free Malaysia Today headlines say that GST burdens the rakyat, says oppositions. Using these examples, we can see that the contextualization were altered to ensure that the audience understand differently and to interpret it differently. Moving on to the next slide is we got the real life example using the advertisements. To put it much clearer, you can see that the marketers reuse familiar slogans and movie quotes or cultural references to ensure that the advertisement is much easier and to ensure that the advertisement is engageable to the audiences. And we can see that the slogans "Dogs are man's best friends" were used by the Aura Good Cat 03 electric car, but they change it a bit to basically they use recontextualization to ensure that the meaning is different, using like dogs are man's best friend, cats are mankind allies, because the name of the car is Aura Good Cat 03. Moving on to the next slide, we got the use of meme and how does it work, the use of meme itself. Memes or remix of images, phrases or jokes from pop culture or current events, and the use of this meme is to create humor or jokes so that those who get the references understand it and can understand the context behind the memes itself. We can see that the example of using Shrek or the face of Shrek, using the visual of Shrek itself, can make the meaning different while adding on some words to to emphasize the use of Shrek image. Moving on to our last slide for no second last slide, which is the academic and institutional settings, where the teachers can use anything in the textbook and use it to change the meaning of the textbook and to make it easier for the students to understand. Where we can see that to make it easier for you, try to describe your life right now using the theories mentioned in the class. But the students understand the question that her teacher said, and her answer is the theories that I learned is honesty in doing work. To describe my life is I got too many assignments. Please reduce it a bit. So the meaning of the use of previous context were recontextualized and change the meaning, and you can see that in the students she changed the meaning of the context itself. So moving on to the next slide is that in research writing we use intertextuality, where the current researcher has to cite it from the previous researcher, and this previous researcher also cited from the original researcher. You can see the how it works is scholar cite, paraphrase, or critic previous research to build new arguments. And the reason behind this is to situate new findings within existing knowledge. You can see that this guy over here is the owner of the research, but the second researcher had to cite it from him. But we can see that in the current generation, some of us couldn't cite it, the reference from the article. So what we do, we use ChatGPT. So that's all from me. Moving on to the next presenter.
Thank you, Rider Hakim. So this is imagine you guys just got back from work, and of course you will say these kind of words. It was a long day, or it was a long, long day. I think most of us we say that it was a long, long day for me today. It's not a lazy words, but it's some kinds of expressive when you're too tired with your works. So my name is Ashwan Samanam Tezhan, and today I'll be presenting about the repetitions in the conversations. So, the repetition itself is common and also purposeful in the conversation to convey the meaning to the listeners. From the Barbara Johnson himself, it stated that the spoken language doesn't have a different types with the written language, because in written language we can't easily repeat that words again and again because it will disturb the meanings, and also it will actually make the grammars wrong. Other than that, repetition is also frequent and also functional. Most of the time it's not as accidental happen, and it serves real interactional purposes. Johnson itself mentioned that repetition of words, phrases, and whole structure is actually common in the conversation. So, this is like all of the key functions of the repetition in our daily life. So, first, emphasize or clarify the ideas to make sure the listeners understands what we are talking to them. Show agreement or support, which is agree or not with what are they talking about. Express irony or challenge, maybe mocking them in sarcasm way. Repair speech or misunderstanding. Restate what that we have stated before. Manage turn taking and pacing. Have a pause in our conversation and build rapport and share the understanding, which is can relate to the culture understanding. So this is I have like four examples to show you guys today. So first example is a Tojolaba conversation. We have two people here, which is Joanna and Santis. So Joanna said that it's very difficult, and Santis said it's very difficult. Um, Santis repeat back what Joanna says, because in here it states that Santis is agree what Joanna said. So in here it's agreement and support. Other than that, they also build the shared meaning with themselves. And we can see in third sentence, Santis said because surely because. In here we can see that she paused a little while. In here, it can relate with holding the floor. And lastly, both of them say he bites, which means in here they have the same understanding between them, and this can relate with the cultural knowledge reinforcement. So for the next example is the Ross and Guildenstern. So the player said that the old man thinks he's in love with his daughter. And after that, he mentioned, no, no, no. He has not got a daughter. The old man thinks, and Rose replied with the old man is. In that first sentence, we can see that the play itself repaired and no, have a wrong statement about that. So in the second sentence, he repaired and clarified his previous sentence. And for the last sentence, the old man is, it brings the confusion to the Rose. What kind of things that the player want to talk about? And for the last point is, we can see that the play itself have the structural coherence for his statement. So for the next example is gossip conversation. So we have Mary, Lee, and Sue. So we can see in here, none say that Mary will tell Mike, and Lee say Mary will tell Mike, but Sue will tell Mike too. And Sue responded with a protest. I'm not that kind of person. And then Lee mocking Sue. I'm not that kind of person. So in the particular things, is we can see that Lee is actually mockery, have the mockery and sarcasm in this conversation. And other than that, the rhythm and energy in this conversation is actually playful, and it doesn't need a serious things with this kind of conversation. And we can see that the turn taken they have is actually one by one. And lastly is the post divorce talk. When we talk about divorce, it's all about understanding the deep emotion between them. So, what I really like is people really well. You just can't get to know 10 people really well. Yeah, that's no time. That's not time. So, in here, we can see that really well is repeat like two times. That emphasize of emotional meaning when they want to get the divorce. And the repetition of yeah is a support through the emotional emotional meaning for the divorce. So they actually reinforce the shared experience between them. So that's all for me. I'll pass to the next presenter.
Thank you so much. Now, my name is Nur Shazlin Arisa binti Ahmad Jafar, metric number 2213458. So, I'm going to explain on the second part of repetition in conversation. So, we heard Sister Serena just now mention on repetition like hey, hey, yay, yay. But actually, there's more form of repetition. So we're going to focus on these three forms of repetition, which is the first one is alliteration, second is parallelism, and the last one is chiasmus. So alliteration is basically the use of a series of words beginning with the same sound. For example, we have here is fresh flowers flourish fully. So the second one is parallelism, we where it is a repeated grammatical structure. For example, we have is easy come, easy go. It's where both phrases use an adverb modifying a verb. And the last one is chiasmus. Chiasmus is basically the order of elements are switched. So we have had there when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So we're going to go deeper into each of these forms. The first one is alliteration. As I mentioned before, it starts with the beginning of the word will have to start with the same consonant sounds. Just because it has the same consonants like PP or BB, it does not mean it is an alliteration because it needs to be the same consonant sounds. For example, here we have kids' coats. It does not have the same consonant on the first beginning of the word, but it is an alliterative because it has the same consonant sounds. And for example, we have here is phony people. It starts with both P, but it does not have the same consonant sounds. Therefore, it is not an alliteration. Another example of alliteration is a tongue twister. So let me just try and do this tongue twister. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. A pack of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. So, in order for a sentence to be alliteration, it needs to be continuously use the same consonant sounds to start. So if it has some distraction in the middle, like too much distraction that does not start with the same consonant sounds, it's not going to be an alliteration. So also alliteration usually used by children to enhance their pronunciation and also to clarify their way of speaking. Aside from children, actually, political, public speakers, and also, what do you call it, actors usually use alliteration or this tongue twister to practice their speaking to enhance their way of speaking and clarity. Next is parallelism. So parallelism is basically to make the sentence a little bit more concise, clear, and short. So it's easier for people to actually understand what you want to point out in a sentence. And the structure is very important when you use parallelism. So we have examples here. You can see actually the difference between not parallel and parallel. So the business accepts cash, credit cards, and you can even pay with a check. This is not parallel. Why? Because they have an non-necessary words that adds on you can even pay with a check. But in parallel, you can actually just say the business accept cash, credit cards, and checks, and people can already understand. Okay, this is the main point. They can accept cash, credit cards, and checks. And you can even pay is not really necessary because you can already highlight it over there. Moving on for the last one is chiasmus. So chiasmus actually came from the Greek term, which is diagonal arrangement. So basically it is to describe two successive clauses or sentences where the key words or phrases are repeated in both clauses but in reverse order. For example, here we have is when the going gets tough and the tough gets going. So you can see that the main point they wanted to highlight is going and tough. So these two are switched in the second clauses, but when the and gets are bound together because you still want them to be in the same structure but different meaning. So actually, chiasmus, alliteration, and also What was it? Anchiasmus, alliteration, and parallelism are always used in conversation because they are easy to be understood and sometimes they are easier to stick into our mind. Thank you.